All right, so welcome to another Q&A session. Today is April 17th. So to begin, first question comes from Future Sailor Bahr asking about how often are deployments. So deployments, it depends on the mission and the ship. Some ships go more than others, so I can't really give you an exact figure, exact number, because it's always different. All right, so the next question comes from Future Sailor Rumney asking me about what your goal should be for run, push-ups, and sit-ups. In my best opinion, enough to pass. Because when you get to boot camp, what matters the most is being able to pass. Now, if you want to be number one, alpha male, whatever like that, then, strive for the excellent. But your goal should be to pass. All right. Next question comes from Future Sailor Hernandez asking me about flight physicals. Now, Future Sailor Hernandez, I looked around Google and typed in flight physical. I didn't really know what that was. And I still couldn't find a definite answer for what that was. It came up Army flight physicals and Marine Corps flight physicals. Now, if you're looking for normal enlisted rate for like AOs or whatever, there is no separate physical test that the enlisted people go through. Maybe if you want to be like a more specialized, like Spec Ops or whatever like that, maybe the flight physicals exist. But I don't know exactly what you are talking about. And if I think I know what you're talking about, you might be, thinking that if you want to be air rate, there's different flight physical standard. There isn't. It's the same for everybody. All right. Next question comes from Future Sailor Prince asking me about, do they do duck walk in boot camp? No. Next question comes from Future Sailor Garcia. How do you impress your recruit division commander? Your recruit division commander is your instructor. So my best advice to you, Future Sailor Garcia, and what I personally do when I'm, in my ship, in my command, I just go around to people that I respect, like first class petty officers or chiefs or senior chiefs or master chiefs, and I go around and I just ask them like, hey, what do you look for in a sailor? And I'll just read it off to you. I asked one of my first classes, and he said, good character, loyalty, humility, integrity, commitment to the mission, servant heart, quality work ethic, military bearing and appearance, know and respect chain of command, seek to understand that understood, and the list goes on and on. But my best advice to you, if you want to impress your recruit division commander, when you meet them, when you have the opportunity, just go up to them and sit down with them, each one of them, you're going to have 3, and just say, hey, what do you look for? And they're going to give you the list of, what they look for. And try to fill that requirement and go a little bit above and excellent as much as you can in your best opinion of what you can do. And also ask them like, hey, I know at the end of boot camp 10% of the division gets promoted. In your opinion, what's that standard? What do I need to do to meet your standard? And in my opinion, that is so much better than not asking the question, right? It's better to know the requirements than not know it at all, because it's like shooting the dart in the blind when you're trying to get promoted in boot camp. If you don't know exactly where you're shooting, the chances of you actually getting it are lower than somebody who knows exactly around what area that they need to throw the dart at. So that is in my opinion, all right? Next question comes from Future Sailor Martinez asking me about who are LSs in contact with, like mostly around in jobs. LSs is a supply department, so I am in contact with a lot of supply department rates, such as CSs, SHs, PSs, and stuff like that. And also asking me about what orders did my fellow LSs get. So when I was in A school, I got to meet the detailer, the person that picks your orders. And unfortunately for me, he said there's not a lot of overseas availability at the time. So your orders depend on availability. And so a lot of people that I went to A school with got Florida, Virginia, Hawaii, Cali, and stuff like that. Some people already went on deployment, went to Korea, went to Bahrain, went to Italy, and stuff like that. So that's pretty cool. Next question comes from Manzanilla asking about wrote me a long paragraph, and he said, I feel like my recruiter is doing me wrong. So what do you do in that situation if you feel like your recruiter is not treating you right? You don't want to feel bad. Don't feel bad for your recruiter. If you texting your recruiter like 4 times and your recruiter is not responding, text until your recruiter responds, because you need to understand that your recruiter needs you. All right, more than you need your recruiter. You need to understand that. All right, your recruiter has a job to do. They need to fill in numbers. They need to fill in rate. They need you for numbers. Okay, you don't need your recruiter because there's variety. You could just say, all right, if you're not going to treat me right, if you're not going to answer my question, I'll drop you and I'll find somebody else who's going to treat me right, who's going to treat me properly. You have the option to do that. You are in full control of this thing, right? Let's say your recruiter didn't treat you right. Your recruiter and yourself, you're not communicating properly, and you end up with a contract that you didn't really want, that you don't really want, where you could have gotten something that if you communicated better, you could have gotten a rate that you wanted. Now you're stuck with this contract for the next 2 years. If you want to cross rate after that, you can, or maybe 4 years, 5 years, or 6 years, or maybe you go on des. Now you're stuck with that contract and you don't want to be in that position, right? You are dealing with your life for the next at least 2 years, right? Now, for example, let's say it's a 4-year contract and you're in a rate that you don't want to be. Now, after 2 years, then you can cross rate, but that's aside from the point, right? You don't want to be wasting your time a little bit, right? You don't want to be wasting your time. So make sure you are communicating effectively. Make sure your recruiter is treating you right. If you don't like it, in my best opinion, just walk away and say, hey, if you're not going to treat me right, I'm walking away. I'm not going to deal with you, and I'm going to find somebody else that's going to help me, all right? So next question comes from future seller Garcia, asking me about what job should people pick? What rate should you pick? So in my best opinion, right? For example, for me, I chose logistics specialist as my first rate. Then I found out MCs exist, mass communication, dealing with video, photography, editing, magazine, newspaper, and all that kind of stuff. So I wanted to do that MC, but my recruiter did me wrong, told me, hey, MCs, they want you to do it for 20 years. Basically, kind of scared me, trying to convince me not to change my rate because he didn't want to do the paperwork. So I got stuck with LS, which I'm still satisfied with. But the reason why I chose LS in the first place is because after my contract of 5 years, I wanted to open my own business where I have merchandise, where I have inventory, where I deal with business. Logistics specialists deal with merchandise, deal with inventory. So it made sense to me to gain experience in a multi-million dollar level, right? And then after my military life, transition, start my own business, and have that similar process, have that experience, have that background put in place, right? For example, let's say you want to start a restaurant business after your military life, let's say 4 years, right? Do you think being in an aviation rate is beneficial for you? Now, in a way, being in the military is beneficial, but I would say to you, I would suggest you, maybe instead of being in an aviation rate, maybe you should look into being a culinary specialist, because they deal with working in the galley, feeding thousands of people, and cooking food and all that kind of stuff. So if you are very serious about being in the restaurant industry, right, maybe being a culinary specialist makes sense for you more compared to other rates. So I'm not saying do this, do that, but just think about what rates are going to help me transition better into my civilian career path. That is what I personally recommend. Next question comes from future seller Martin, asking me about how do you best prepare for PFA, physical fitness assessment. Now, there is no silver bullet, guys. There's no pill that you just eat and then you can, knock out a lot of push-ups. The only way to increase your push-ups, the only way to increase your sit-ups, the only way to run your time within the requirement is to actually do them, right? Just do the push-ups, just do the sit-ups, do it consistently, to do the run, push yourself, and do it consistently. Consistency and actually doing it is the most important thing. All right. So next question comes from future seller Alvarez, asking about, are there gyms in A school? Yes, Alvarez, there are gyms in school. I haven't heard an A school that didn't have a gym yet. So next question comes from future seller Rumney, asking me about what are the differences between chief and petty officers and how do you address them. Chiefs have an anchor, gold anchor, and petty officers have a birds. It's a crow with chevrons. So basically, imagine a triangle, but without the base, and 3 of those, and a bird on the top. So you can Google it. All right. And how you address them is say, hey, good morning, chief. And then you ask them a question or whatever. And if it's a petty officer, you would say, good morning, petty officer. Now, after boot camp, you don't really say petty officer. You just address them by their rate and rank. For example, let's say I'm a petty officer first class. You would say, good morning, LS1. All right. Now, when you are in boot camp, right, you're going to see people around with a gold anchor. You're going to see people around with, the crow and the chevron. Those are people like Arpak has a gold anchor, just like a little small mini one. You don't want to address them as chief. All right. People make that mistake sometimes, and they go up to like an 18-year-old guy and they said, good morning, chief, because you don't know any better, because they have a golden anchor, and you might think, oh my God, he's a chief. But no, he's just an Arpak. They just have a single gold small little anchor just to make it distinguished. All right. So don't address them as a chief. He's 18 years young. All right. So next question comes from future seller Martinez, asking about how have I dealt with any GMs, gunner's mates? No. Next question comes from TheJohn, asking me about bunch of questions for officer routes. Now, if you are interested in becoming an officer from once you enlist, so from enlisted to officer, it's called the STA 21 program. So I'll put the link to the website down below. They have all the information there. Check it out. Once you enlist, once you are in the Navy, you can do that program. And some of my buddies are doing that right now, where they applied for it, they got accepted. So, after they finish a certain amount of time, they go back home, finish their college degree, come back and go to the officer candidate school. So some people chose that path. All right, so next question, same from TheJohn, asking me about if you're going in as E3 in boot camp, when do you start getting paid as an E3? So when you're in boot camp, you get a pay cut. So I'm not sure exactly how much the pay cut is, but there is a pay cut. You don't get the full E3 pay. It's not until you graduate boot camp, until you finish boot camp, that you get your full E3 pay, or full E2, full E1, whatever your rate is. All right, so that concludes today's question of the day, Q&A session. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great Navy day.